Hey guys, we just got one story in this video. This one was so good, I'm going to let it stand alone in a video by itself. Sometimes I say hold on to your weaves and strap up your girdle, but this one is for real. I actually talked to this guy and he's for real. He's very believable, let's put it that way. So let's jump into his story. He writes, I'm going to title this story, No One Will Ever Believe This. I know the encounters sent to you by viewers don't need titles, but this is what I have called this event since it happened. No one will ever believe this, and I know it. That is why I have never told anyone, not even my wife or my children. I have 2 grown sons who hunt with me on occasion, and I won't even tell them. There's 2 reasons for this. One, we've already covered. No one's going to believe it. It's so unbelievable that if I tell it to anyone I know, I will become the village idiot. Number 2, if I tell others that I hunt with, primarily my 2 sons, and if they do believe the story, it might ruin their love for the outdoors and the sport of hunting. I don't want to do that to them, but all in all, I'm fairly sure they would think their father is an idiot anyway. So I have kept my mouth shut about this for years. There's really no need to give you an exact location on the event because if I did, you wouldn't find the place anyway. But let it be enough to say that this occurred in the Mississippi River Basin or Delta, south of Memphis and north of Greenville, Mississippi. Let's get to the story. I've held this inside long enough. I am a solitary hunter. Even when the boys were growing up, I took them with me for one season. After that, I would set them on their way into the woods to scout and find their own places to hunt. Hunting in packs as humans has never been much fun to me. I like to be alone, and I wanted my sons to know what it's like to be there. Being there where it all happens alone is 90% of the thrill. You will get to see things that very few humans get to see. My sons have formed their habits, and I would say that they're just like me. We all may go together, but when the sun rises on us, we are far from other humans as possible, usually for the whole day, sun up to sundown. I walked into the heavy timber long before sunup, and I was making my way to the tree that I had marked to climb on this morning of fall deer season. I had to wade through knee-deep water in some places just to get there. The area I was hunting in was underwater in places most of the year. This is where the big deer go, and this is why they get so big and they live so long. They know to stay away from populated areas, and they know where the food is. I could see the reflective tack that I had applied to the oak tree that I would climb in the distance. Ready for some coffee from the thermos, I picked up my pace. I pulled the climber off my back and attached it to the tree and made my way up. Once I was settled in, that good, hot cup of coffee hit the spot. I waited for the sun to rise. It was peaceful. Wildlife moved under me, the usual sounds. Raccoons returning from their nightly excursions, squirrels beginning to move around to gather food for the winter, and I remember hearing ducks lifting off the flooded areas in the distance. Again, very few humans get to hear and see these things as they happen in the places where no one goes. There was enough light that I could see the ground now. I heard something running to my left. I knew it was a deer, but there was no need to get my bow ready. It was too early to see well enough to make out what I was shooting at, so I sat there expecting the animal to run by at any moment. It was the deer I had been expecting, and she was running full speed. In the grayness of the misty morning darkness, I could see clearly enough that it was definitely a doe. She stopped in front of my stand a short distance out. If that had been a big buck, it would have been the perfect broadside shot, but I wasn't there for does. I saw her heaving and trying to catch her breath. Now, deer don't usually do that. It's so rare that you'll see a winded deer in any condition, and it made me really focus on her. Her lips were curled and her tongue dangled from her mouth. Now, this is typical with a deer being run by dogs, but you never see them short of breath. Something had been running this doe for a while, and she could not shake whatever was chasing her. I knew that it had to be dogs. They are the only animal that will absolutely run a deer to exhaustion and to the point that the deer just quits. Once that happens, the deer has no energy left to fight. They are just too spent. She began to run again in the direction she had been heading. I heard her splash through some water and twigs breaking as she made her escape. I fully expected to see coyotes or dogs to follow her trail. I suppose I should have gotten ready to kill one or two had they been coyotes, but dropping a coyote in the area meant that its scent would keep any deer away for the next few days. I sat tight and I waited. A dark figure began to appear to my left, right on the deer's tracks, but it was bigger than a dog and there was only one. It was making huge bounds, and for a minute I thought this had to be an enormous pig chasing that deer. It happens. It's rare, but it really happens. It was a pig, a big pig that I expected to run across my kill zone, but when it got broadside of me, it wasn't a pig. I have never seen an animal like this in my life, not even at the zoo. It was altogether something weird and something else, like a giant wolf, but it wasn't a wolf either. It was snorting and grunting as it passed my area, and in a second it was gone, splashing through the same water the deer had a few minutes earlier. I wasn't scared or worried about this thing, more like shaking your head and wiping your eyes to make sure you're not dreaming. I'm telling you now, if a hippopotamus had run by me wearing a pair of spandex dancing pants, well, at least I would have known what I was seeing. But this thing was off the charts, and my mind began to rationalize things, to look for plausible explanations. You know how your mind does that, right? I soon wrote it in my mind's sketchbook as a strange-looking dog that was twice the size of a deer. That's what I settled on. Really? Nope, I could not accept that one. This had to be a new creature to these woods, and to the world for that matter. I could finally see through the woods clearly, and I looked and scanned with my best detective skills to try to see anything that would make any sense, but the woods were quiet now. I relaxed and I poured another cup of coffee, and I settled back into my seat. A commotion started in the distance. Something was fighting way out there, snarling and growling, and then the telltale bleats of a deer. Whatever this thing was had caught its prey. I could hear the fight, although it was faint, and it sounded as if the little doe had not gone down quietly, but soon silence overtook the woods again. There was no way I was sitting in that stand all day after all that. I tried to be disciplined, and I tried to sit tight. I was there for a big buck, but I could not get the images out of my mind. I could not stop thinking about what had just run right in front of me. A few minutes later, I was climbing down. The woods were ruined for the morning anyway, and I was there for 4 days, so there was plenty of time to hunt, and I had several spots located to hunt while I was there. I started following the trail of the prey and the predator. I doubted I would end up seeing anything, but I had to take a peek at what had happened. It took me an hour of moving through some thick brush and deep water to get to a blood trail, and I honestly don't know how I found it. Once the animals were out of sight, they could have gone anywhere, but I knew the direction the sounds of the battle had come from, and I kept working in that direction. Hair and blood became more visible on the ground and through the water, so I raised my head knowing I would see a kill in the distance any minute. I knew it would be there. Nothing in these woods carries its kill away. It eats whatever it kills where it falls. And I saw it. There was the color of the deer hide contrasted with the green vegetation that was still on the vine. The little doe had not even put on her gray winter coat at this point in the year, and it was obvious to me I was just a few yards from the kill. I had no idea what to expect. Was I walking up on a dangerous animal that would protect its kill? I had no experience with this, but what the heck? At this point, I would have kicked myself if I had not walked the next 50 feet to figure it out. I nocked an arrow, it's all I had, and in no way would protect me from a large animal, but I brought the bow up to a draw position anyway, and I stepped forward. Within a few feet now, and the predator was still there. I could see it. A large humped back rose and fell over the deer. It was feeding. Bones crunched. Whatever this thing was, it was crunching bones. That meant it had powerful jaws. I had messed up. My face began to tingle. It felt like someone throwing darts at my face. How it had not made me in my approach is beyond me, but after all these years, I still think it was used to its solitary existence. No one comes this far back into the jungle of the river delta. I started to back away, low and quiet. I had to get out of there. The beast stopped feeding, and all movement that I could see the second before through the honeysuckle vines got real still. I took 2 or 5 more short steps back, and it raised up and it looked right at me. Its head now above the tangled vines, and I saw its true size. Before, it had been running in a low position. Now it was on 2 legs. I should have drawn my bow. I should have run. I should have done something, but what does a man do when he faces certain death? That is the instinct that took over. I was about to die. I was about to be eaten and crapped out on the Mississippi mud with the doe in a day or 2. I don't know what I did for the next 5 seconds because that is all the time that I had. Later, when it was all over, I stood there with my shoulder on fire from holding my bow at a draw position. Apparently, I had raised the bow and drawn it. It was a pointless gesture, though, because the creature cocked its head, sniffed the air with its huge blood-covered nostrils, showed its blood-stained teeth, and quickly lowered back down, picked up what was left of the deer in its huge mouth, and slowly, on 4 limbs, slinked away, suddenly sprinting into the woods, and I never saw it again. I would like to give you a good description of this thing, but the only part of it I saw clearly was from just below its neck to the top of its head. From my position, it was tall, a good foot taller than me, and I'm average height. Its coat was so dark that it looked black, but it was probably dark brown. Its ears were like that of a German shepherd, fully erect and clear of hair on the inside. The muzzle was short, not long like a shepherd. Very nasty set of teeth that had to include 3-inch canines. And last, from my perspective, the chest area was not flat horizontally like a human. The chest protruded with a breastbone much like a dog. But I don't think this thing was a dog or a dogman, as some folks call them. This thing, in my opinion, was some type of mutant animal. An experiment gone wrong, if you will. Maybe not an experiment, but a botched genetic manipulation attempt between 2 or more animals. You did an interview with a man not long ago who believes their research area has mutant Bigfoot now in that area. I think that is what this thing was. I don't think the Dogman thing explains it at all. I stood in that shallow puddle for several minutes with my bow drawn before my shoulder began to hurt and snapped me out of my stare. The expression on my face must have been that of amazement at what I had seen and that I had not been attacked. I walked backwards for a long time, scanning for any movement, but I never saw anything. Eventually, I started shaking and had to sit down on the ground once I found a dry spot to let my system get somewhere close to normal. I was so shaken and weak that walking was becoming difficult. I finally made it back to the place that I had set up my camp. Immediately, I began breaking camp. Getting out of that place was now a high priority. A night alone there was not going to happen. I quickly cranked down my pop-up, I secured everything as best as I could, and I hooked the trailer to my truck. And I was about to start the engine when a green truck pulled up blocking my exit. It was the game warden who patrolled the area. I got out and we began to talk. The usual routine. I showed him my license, my permit, etc., etc. I was actually relieved to be standing next to another human at this point. After a talk about how I got back that far in there with my truck and had I killed anything that day, had I seen any other hunters, I asked him if he had seen or had any reports of a new species of predator in the area. He got real quiet and he just stared at me. The corner of his mouth began to raise as if he was going to smile, but it wasn't a smile. He was searching for something to say, and instead of answering my question, he asked me if I had seen anything. I shut my mouth. I wasn't going to say a word. He knew what was out there. He knew. In a minute, I said no, and that I had not seen any wildlife at all that day. And then the inquisitive, "Are you sure about that?" popped out of his mouth. I don't know why, but the way he asked me made me nervous. My response was that if I had seen anything, that I would have told him. I then told him I had to get home, and was he done with me? He said yes. He got in his truck and he pulled away. But he was on his radio the minute he slammed that door shut. I was never so happy to hit Highway 61 and head north in all my life. Within a week, I had all these details written down, and I kept them in a safe spot in my desk. I knew as the years went by that I would forget these details. I took what I had written over 20 years ago and I rewrote it here for you and your audience, Cam. I doubt anyone will believe me anyway. Why would they? The story you just read is straight out of a nightmare. Remember when your mother used to tell you that there are no monsters? Your mother was wrong. Believe me, in the dark swamps of the flooded areas in the Mississippi Basin, there is a monster that roams the woods and it kills deer. Maybe it's still there. Maybe it had a mate and there are more of them now. But I'm not going back to find out. I don't have any problems with this event in my life. I still hunt, just not in that area. And it's a shame, too. That was a great place to hunt. I think about it, but I don't dwell on it. It was just a thing that happened. A man has to move on and live, and that is what I did. And I didn't spend a minute trying to get other people to believe me because I knew they wouldn't. But I will tell you this, it sure feels good to tell you about it. I feel like the story is in good hands now. So Cam, go do your thing and tell this story. And then he signs off. Oh my gosh, what a story. Is that a Dogman? Is it a mutant Bigfoot? It's in the Delta. I'm real familiar with the Mississippi River bottoms. I've never seen anything or heard anything like this. What do y'all think it is? A Dogman? A mutant Bigfoot? Is it a Bigfoot? Is it a werewolf? I don't know. But again, I talked to this guy and he's for real. He's so convincing that I cannot question this story. But I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a nice comment for him in the comments. I know he would appreciate it. And I really appreciate you guys listening this far, and we'll see you next time on the next video. Thanks.